I'm finally doing my wrap-up video for the SCOR camp that I went to. It's been a couple of weeks now, actually. I gave myself a little bit of time to kind of come down from the experience. I think that my enthusiasm was pretty clear in my previous videos. So I wanted to make sure that I also gave a really rational, well thought out wrap up. And I'm going to answer some questions that some people have brought up. I know some of these questions already got answered on Facebook. I'm going to go over some of my experiences also. We pretty much the same answers as some of the other things that have been said. So let's get started. The first thing was mostly concerns about travel. There was a lot of concern about getting to and from the church where SCOR camp is held and the hotel. Getting to and from the camp was not hard at all, but I had a car. I drove up from Pittsburgh, so I had my own vehicle. And it seemed like a lot of people had their own vehicles. I'm not aware of anybody who actually flew into Rochester, although there is an airport in Rochester, so you certainly can fly in. And I think it's very safe to assume that there is a shuttle from the airport to the hotel. But once you're at the hotel, what do you do then? Well, most of us have vehicles, it seems. I certainly was there with my vehicle. And the camp actually facilitates ride sharing. So if you're going to be there without a car, and you need to be able to get to and from the camp, you can say something to the camp, and they'll help arrange and facilitate all of that. Is it far? Google Maps said that it was like a 15-minute drive. In my experience, it was closer to 20 minutes. And it's not just down the street. Like you actually drive a modest distance to get there. Definitely not walking distance. Absolutely. There's just no way. Because even though it takes 20 minutes, most of that is open straight road, and you're just hitting the occasional stop sign or whatever. Because we're talking about like an area outside of Rochester. This is not downtown, so it's a little more suburban in nature. So some people asked about shopping while you're there. The hotel that the SCOR camp uses is across and down the street from an enormous shopping plaza that had a Target, a Michael's, a whole bunch of restaurants. So like shopping wise, there was no issue. In fact, I made pretty great use of that because having just gone off of my ADD medication, I was really in great need of being able to get like some of my old coping mechanisms, like having enough caffeine to keep me focused, and getting little toys that I can squish and play with during classes, because there were a couple of times when I was just so fidgety and I couldn't sit and listen. So I went to Target and got a little capsule toy with a squishy. And of course that also means that you can get groceries and things, drinks, whatever. Because yeah, in addition to the Target, there is an actual grocery store there. Getting to try other instruments was a question that popped up. Yes, I got to try a cello for a little bit. One of the other camp attendees was more than happy to let me try using her cello and instruct me a little bit in using it, because even though you hear a lot of people say stuff like if you learn to play the violin, then you'll be able to learn stuff like cello. And while that is absolutely true, it is true within a limit, where holding a violin bow is a little different than holding a cello bow. and the fingerings for violin are very close. The fingerings for cello are very far apart. And then the trickiest part of all is sitting the cello in front of you and getting that done properly. Um, so that was cool. One of the other camp attendees let me try her cello, and I liked playing the cello. I think I like the violin a little bit more because it's more portable, but I would love to have a cello to toy around with here at the house. So that was fun. I also got to play the viola a little bit. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was an opportunity for me to experiment with other instruments besides the violin. Um, but obviously, SCORE is focused on string instruments, so it's not like somebody was there with a trumpet inviting people to try out the trumpet. Um, Although I bet if somebody had a trumpet, people would be trying it out. Uh, I mentioned that I play the ocarina, and people were like, "Oh, did you bring it? Can we try it?" And so, I mean, we're talking about a group of adults who love music and love learning music, and they've chosen string instruments, maybe because they specifically love string instruments, but generally they love music and they love learning. So if you have an instrument like an ocarina, bring it. People will probably be really interested, um, and they'll want to try it out. I did take my Arhu, and some people toyed around with that a little bit, so it was fun. Um, what did I buy? Some people were curious about what I bought because I did mention that I spent some money. I got a new shoulder rest. I'll do a review of the shoulder rests that I bought because um, obviously it's a topic that people discuss a lot is their violin shoulder rests, and because I have a very slight scoliosis in the base of my neck, uh, it's a very important issue for me. It's very difficult for me to find a shoulder rest because in addition to the scoliosis, I have a very tall neck. Um, so I did get a new shoulder rest, and I also um, got a new bow. I got a carbon fiber bow. So um, that paid off for Stringhouse, right? I mean, they were set up there with stuff and they let people borrow things and try them out for a day or two. I trial tested my carbon bow for 2 days before I actually 3 days before I bought it. Although by the end of the first day, my decision was made. Um, and so I'd be happy to do a separate video talking about those things that I bought. I know a lot of people who are buying like new bows or new shoulder rests and things. And one thing I wanted to mention when it comes to the topic of the shoulder rest is how in several of the other videos I talk about how tired I was and how sore I was. And part of that was because I didn't have a shoulder rest at the start of the camp that was really appropriate for long-term playing. Like it was fine for playing for maybe 20 minutes, but playing the violin all day with this shoulder rest that I had was causing some real issues. I was getting bruising and stuff. So I wanted to clarify that comment that I made earlier about being sore, and also to clarify a little bit about pushing my being so tired. Um, it's really because I was pushing myself so hard. I don't want to make it sound like the camp was there like, hey, you gotta play the violin, come on. They weren't like that at all. But I was, because I knew I was there for just the 4 days, and I really wanted to put every ounce of energy I had into my experience. And I'm sure a lot of people who go to the SCORE camp feel the same way, but it's not necessarily something that you have to do. If you're able to just, if you don't want to push yourself every little ounce that you can, maybe because you've got to do other stuff later in the day, or I don't know. It's just I thought it was worth mentioning that SCOR Camp was the kind of place where you can put what you want into it. You absolutely get more out of it than you put into it. And people are going to be okay with whatever amount you do put into it. As long as you're not dragging everybody else down. Like, as long as you're putting something into it, I think they'll be okay. So I wanted to clarify that a little bit because I realized that some of my comments in the other videos might have sounded like I was being driven by the camp itself. And the camp is very motivational, but a lot of that also was in me. There were some questions about where to practice. People were allowed to practice in their hotel room, although it was encouraged that you put a mute on your violin. I never did practice in my hotel room. I just didn't feel comfortable with that. But the hotel that SCOR books for us does have a room set aside for jamming, like I said in one of my other videos. And I felt like that room was a little underutilized. And that actually turned into a great opportunity for me to practice in the evening. I went down to the jam room. Nobody was there, so I just practiced for an hour. There are also practice rooms at the camp itself. They have rooms set aside specifically for you to go into and practice to your heart's content. That was cool. The rooms are utilized also as private classrooms, but they have a lot of them. So if somebody's in a room getting a lesson, you just go to another room and see if it's open. Maybe somebody's already practicing in it, maybe not. It was very freeform like that, but I never had trouble finding an open room to practice in, which to me says that they have enough rooms because there was almost always somebody practicing somewhere, yet I was able to find an open room. So they really had the accommodation set up in an appropriate amount. Recital opportunities. I don't really know about that. The basic track didn't really have anything like that. I'm to understand that on Saturday there were some recitals that were held in the cafeteria. I didn't get to attend them because I was in another class, but I think that those were just open recitals. So if you wanted to do a recital Saturday morning, you were allowed to do so. Now the big question, was it worth it? There's two ways of addressing that question, of course, from the experiential perspective, but also from a financial perspective. So the experience, I think it's pretty clear from my other videos. Yes, it was absolutely worth it. I got to do things that I'm just not going to be able to do back home here in Pittsburgh. I'm not going to be able to play in a group of beginners doing some basic chamber music and stuff. There's nobody around here that I can find to do that with. So that was an opportunity that I specifically went to SCOR to get, and I got it. So I'm very happy with that. And I think that was definitely worth the trip. Looking at it money-wise, and of course these two are related, for me, the whole thing cost about $1,000 between the basic tuition, the lunch plan, and the hotel. And that's pretty much all I put into it. All of the other extras like private lessons and that sort of thing, I didn't do. But all of that was about $1,000. Now, locally, we have many teachers, and the teachers cost on average around $26 a lesson. With one lesson per week, $1,000 comes out to about 38 lessons. So not quite a year's worth of private lessons in 4 days. So that's a very sobering thought because here I don't have a teacher at the moment. I'm self-taught, and part of the reason for that is the cost. 26 bucks a week is something that I'm happy to pay out for my daughter to take violin lessons, but I've chosen to not spend that money on myself. But then I went and dropped $1,000 on this 4-day experience. And the 4-day experience absolutely paid off, and it gave me something that I could not get here. But the flip side of that is I could have had almost a year's worth of lessons. So is it worth it financially? Yes. Is it worth it every year? Maybe not. Maybe if it's one or the other, if it's getting 38 weeks of private lessons once a week or a 4-day experience, if I had to choose between one or the other, I think going forward, I'll have to choose the lessons because the 4-day experience was really valuable and it gave me a lot as a beginner. And it gave me things that I couldn't get otherwise. But now, having gone to the SCOR camp, it just underscores all the more how much I have to gain from private lessons. So if we have to choose between one and the other, that's a very difficult decision to make. If I can have both, then heck yeah, both. Absolutely, no question. And maybe even some kind of compromise there, like maybe a lesson every other week and the SCOR camp. I like the sound of that. I could do that. But a lot of people will say, "Oh, I can do the SCOR camp every year and I don't have to have lessons." Financially, that doesn't make sense. I think financially speaking, you're going to get more out of having lessons than your 4-day experience. But if you can get that 4-day experience, you'll definitely get stuff from it you don't get from your lessons. So it's a complicated issue, and surprisingly complicated. Overall, I would have to say it's absolutely worth it, and I would do it again if I can. And that's one of my goals for next year, is making sure that I am able to go. So that's it. That's my wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed everything. And if you do have any questions, you're always welcome to send me a message and ask, or contact the SCOR camp directly. I'll make sure that the URL is in the description below. They're very cool people. They'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And even if you're not sure about what level you should go into, you can record a video and send it to them and they'll let you know. Like, that's how accommodating they are. So thank you very much for watching.